Welcome everyone. I'm Juan Orkin, and I'm the Talis Marketing Manager. So just going over some housekeeping rules. This webinar is recorded and we'll be sharing the recording through our newsletter. In today's webinar, Georgia, unfortunately, isn't able to make it today, but today I'm joined by Scott, our head of product, Kate, our product manager, and also Lisa, the junior product manager. Next slide, please, Kate. So today we have a very full agenda. We'll start today's webinar with me going over our recent branding update. Then Lisa will take us through the continuous improvements we've made over the summer. Then Kate will talk to us about integrations and go over the use of item importances. Then Kate will go over bookmarking, the redesign theme, and then first phase of accessibility. Then Lisa will look at the resource types supported by our bookmarking update. And Kate will look at the British Library digitisations. Scott will cover the copyright clearance center integrations we have integrated. And lastly, Scott will go over the roadmap of the rest of the roadmap of 2024. So next slide, please, Kate. Yes, next slide as well. Okay, thank you. So as some of you may know, we have launched this week a rebrand. So I wanted to give you some idea as to why we introduced this rebrand. So the idea behind this rebrand was to align the technology from Sage suite of products, which include Talis Aspire and the other products, which are Talis Elevate, Lean Library, and SciWheel. We wanted to do this to give it a refreshed visual identity, to provide a more consistent customer and user experience. This means that the Talis marketing page will be replaced by the technology from Sage page, and this will consolidate all our products into a single website. What does this mean? This doesn't mean that we'll be making any changes to the Talis platform. So that means that there will be no disruptions to the Talis Aspire platform, and there'll be no changes to URLs. We've made some changes to some of the pages in the way they look. However, we are working on providing additional colors based on some feedback we've received. Lastly, if you have any existing collateral and you will need to update that. So we will provide a guide to guide you through the whole rebranding process, which I've just shared in the chat. And with that said, I think it's over to you. Who is it? Kate?
Lisa.
Lisa.
Awesome. Thank you, Juan. Could you, Kate, give me the next slide, please? Thanks. So I have already in a couple of previous webinars been talking about the continuous improvement changes that we've been doing this summer. And here's a list now of all the things that come out. I hope you also have seen them in the newsletters, and they are also all coming up on the support pages as they come. We've been looking into improving functionality and user friendliness for students, for academics, and for librarians. And we've also been working on how to improve staff internal communication. since I've talked mostly about many of these already earlier, I'm not gonna talk through every single one of them, but I wanted to say a few things about the very latest changes, where one is the ability to assign multiple list owners, which we've done in order to make lists searchable on multiple instructors' names. And this means that when you search for a list in the search field or in reports, all the list owners that have been assigned can be, you can find a list with their name. However, when you do make a report, there is a change in the name of the column that was called list owners, and it's called primary list owner now, which hasn't changed anything of the functionality or the roles, but it just means that it's the top name that you can see when you assign list owners. So that's how you know who it is if you want to check. We have also been doing a lot of enhancements to how we portray the clarity of a list status and the publish button, which has been quite a long series of changes very recently. And I will talk about that in a moment a little bit more. And we are also expecting very, very soon for an export functionality from reading lists to Word documents. So that's not yet quite there, but almost. Could you give the next slide, please, Kate? So in previous webinars, I've been talking about that all these changes have been based on direct user feedback. And I wanted to share a couple of figures about where these ideas came from and how much they've been voted for and so on. These are based on AHA, which has been, of course, a very important portal for us when we look at what's needed and wanted. And when I checked which of these directly implemented changes we've done, I could count that 50% of them were from New Zealand and Australia. So the person raising the idea was from an institution there, 30% from UK, and 20% were internal, where our customer success offices had calls with customers and then raised an idea through AHA. Counting votes and so on is a little bit tricky, because there were, of course, many related ideas. For example, the publish button and list status has had a lot of different kinds of ideas that all come together. And also, I think it's worth noting that also ideas that weren't directly implemented were still considered a lot. So we did read through them all, and often, and when we were thinking about what changes to make and how to make them, we were thinking about how we also can help with problems raised in other feedback. Could you give the next slide, please, Kate?
Lisa, we have one question come through from Nikki. Is this the end of the changes to interface for this year? We've been struggling to keep our documentation up to date, ready for the new academic year. So I'd like to know if there's further changes coming. Do you want to answer that?
I can answer that to some degree, yes. This is certainly when the final publish button change comes, it is the final major difference to how it looks for students and academics, yes. Kate will be talking about the bookmarking redesign later, and that one will include also interface changes. But in terms of a lot of different small things that pop up here and there, this is the last Would you say, Scott, that would?
I'll just add to that, yeah, anything else that's added would be a new feature, pretty much apart from the bookmarking, which Kate will talk about. So there's a little bit of changes, as Lisa said, to the publish button, and then we may have a few more new features that pop in, but I'll talk about those later in this show.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Yeah, we appreciate that it's been a lot of small things coming, and that's why we really tried to keep it combined in a short period. So thanks for keeping up with us, or doing your best. And could you give the next slide, please, Kate? So I'll say a couple of words about the publish button and the status, which has been certainly the series of changes where it's coming a lot of small changes after each other, where we wanted to give them to you as soon as possible, but also keep our developers able to do other things. We had two big problems that we wanted to address in this one. One being that list editors sometimes forget to publish a finished list, which is problematic, of course, for students if they don't see the list that they're meant to be using. And also, of course, for librarians reviewing and needing to do acquisition decisions. A second problem is that unfinished lists have been published and sent to review, which also is suboptimal because it causes additional workload to reviewers and makes the decision making harder, and it also means that if students see them, they can see incomplete lists and also dare do decisions based on the wrong things. And then a third problem is a combination of these both, because they can happen after each other as well. So we've been thinking a lot about how we could make the workflow and how the system works with saving changes, and how the process of editing and publishing a list works. How can we make that clearer? How can we make that easier to remember and follow the process? And to do that, we got a lot of feedback on AHA. We talked a lot with our customer success people who came with a lot of insights. We took to heart webinar comments, and then our user experience designer, Anna, made user testing sessions together with some academics, where she was studying how they do their list editing, what kind of problems they have, what they think about, how they reason when they do the process. And then she also had some design options that she was trying out together with the academics. And based on this, we did these changes. Could you give the next slide, please, Kate? And there was a lot of changes. And one of them is that we added a label that changes in color and with text, depending on what status the list is in the process. And also there's a text next to it saying a little bit more about what's happening. Information about if something is in review and what happens next, and whether you in some workflows can see the review was also added to this same header. So they are all now in a position where Anna could conclude that it was easiest for the academics to follow what was happening, and also a more natural place to look for information on these kind of things. It also means that the view review and in review banner is being taken away, and so will also the publish button banner. It will be removed soon. This is because, again, in the user testing, it was observed that these banners could be considered unhelpful. They could be considered quite cluttering, also not targeted at the list editors themselves, but as something for the librarians. So this is something we wanted to mend. We've also added the new list status as well as a publish button next to the back to top button, so that you will always be able to see these buttons and the status also when you scroll down a page. And there is also very, very soon, I'm actually with my second eye looking at the moment, sometimes if maybe it already would be coming up, but there will be coming up a redesign of the publish button and a request review button, which you can see here in the pictures. It's becoming a little bit larger. It's getting its own position together in the header. And it will be visible from the very beginning, the publish button. In this way, Anna could conclude that the academics found it to be easier to understand that it's and remember that it's a key component in the process. The teal one you see now is on branding, on Talis branding, and it will be as a primary color depending on what you have decided for your institution. So this will come very, very soon. And on top of that, there will be coming a request review button, also a rolling one, just like the publish button is rolling. A couple of functionality fixes. And then we will also, looking forward, we will be following up what happens with this and how we can possibly in the future maybe even improve the process and remembering to publish. So that was that. I see there's some chat.
You might start with Helen's.
The new floating publish button is constantly available, even when no changes have been made to the list. As a university that has the forced review option, we are now receiving more review requests when no changes have been made, as academics are clicking publish anyway. This is increasing our workload. Can this be changed so that it only appears when changes have been made? Elangal agrees. Yes. Cool. Yes, this was certainly discussed at depth. There, as I said, there's very much this balance between remembering to publish and not publishing too often when it's not finished. Hopefully it will also, on a larger scale, help with the status button and that it says that it's saving changes automatically and you can see the spinner. So what I didn't say was that the toast messages do remain, but they were considered a little bit difficult to see and trust. So which is one reason why the button was used also when there was nothing to publish. There is a toast message now saying that there are no changes to publish, and we hope that that will, with time, also help learn how the process works. We did want to have the publish button always visible because we still saw it as even more crucial that the list is published even if it's at the wrong place. I think that would be it. We can maybe get back to this in the end as well. I will read them and maybe I'll answer also in the chat. But I will give over to Kate.
All right, thank you very much. Keep the messages coming. I'm going to minimize them a bit right now. All right. I just want to change gears a little bit and talk about the integrations, just a reflection of where we are. I know you guys had some questions on the previous webinar, and I'll try to address that at least a little bit. And a warm welcome to everybody, by the way. It's really great to see so many folks having joined us today. Not a surprise. Just to review, I just want to review both kinds of integrations, both those through reviews for acquisitions, for pricing, and creating purchase requests, as well as talking a little bit about the discovery system integrations. In terms of the acquisitions and those enhanced reviews, we do now have available Oasis for print, eBook Central and Browns, and then a full integration if you're a WMS user for purchase requests through eBook Central and Browns. There was a few people who signed up, but we kind of put that on hold, and I want to invite you now to reach out to customer success team and get those turned on, and we'll do that. We'll work with you to do that. I think we will probably hold reviews and more integrations temporarily and make sure that what we have are working well. The second thing, and just to mention that Oasis was, when we did the initial MVP, allowing Brown's books to be purchased, the purchase request for Brown's books, the biggest piece of feedback we had is that once Oasis was available, then people might be able to adopt those integrations. So with that, the Oasis is, but it's only for print. We will look at expanding that once more becomes available to us from ProQuest. However, we have done the EBC as well for eBook Central, so you have some balance there of different types of resources. So we'd love to hear your feedback and have, if anybody wants to set up a call with me, I'm quite open to it. And then for the second one is the discovery systems we worked on last year. We've had quite a few who have been able to successfully hook up. So this is for when you're in a reading list, maybe for your academics, usually. When they want to add things, they will search the books that you have in your own holdings first. And this was requested to rather improve those processes. Some people do like to have the broader search through Nielsen, but many people wanted to have the narrower search of things already in your holdings. So we've done that for these 4. I know some people have had a few issues with certain things. We are starting to look at that again as we're getting into bookmarking. We're going to kind of reflect on some of the discovery integrations, some of the unique considerations that you had, the fact that not everybody wants to use a link resolver, that sort of thing. Also, I'm very happy to announce that we have been working closely with EBSCO on the EDS integrations. So if you're interested in trying this again, I would encourage you to contact customer success, and we'll coordinate with you to get you hooked up properly. And we may be able to work with EBSCO directly to have them ensure that your API profiles are aligned properly so that you'll get the results that you're looking for. So I hope that's great news. And I'd like to hear people's experience with that. And we're looking forward to setting more people up. With that, are there any questions on any of the different integrations? All right, don't hesitate to ask. I'm going to move on to importances. We talked about this last time. This is the option to encourage use of importance. Not everybody uses importances, and not everybody wants to. But for the people who did want to force the use, we had, if you remember, we analyzed and saw that there may be a great burden for those people, especially at rollover time, if you go to unpublished, that sort of thing. So what we had talked about was providing kind of an interim solution. So we're going to do a couple things. If you choose to turn this on, and we invite you to try it out, we're just finalizing testing now, but it should be available next week, I imagine. Couple things. So when you get to the act of either sending for review or sending to publish, they will be, the academic or the list editor will be presented with the option, a pop-up similar to you see on the right here. If any importances aren't set, you'll get a count of how many items there are, whether it's 2 or 200. And then you'll have a link for set importances, and that will bring people right into the filtered view. That filter went live a few months ago, as you recall. So the set importances button will take you to the filtered, or the academic to the filtered view, where they can set as many importances as they want. Now, because of the potential burden on staff, we have provided the bypass to go directly to review or directly to publish. And I encourage you to, if you want to turn this on, to work with your teams and kind of communicate how you want that to work. But it tests quite successfully. So if somebody has 10 importances not set and they set 3 of them, then the next time they try to publish or send for review, they'll get the revised count. And that's working like a charm. So, and then the other thing, for formerly known as mandatory importance, when they're doing new bookmarks, when they're adding new resources to lists, the default will be set. Importance won't have a blank anymore. It'll be set to whatever the top importance is on your list that you've configured. And they have the option to change it there. So at the moment, that's how it's working, and we want to give that a try out. For those of you who think that'll work, please do contact customer success, and we will get that turned on for you. And we'd love to hear your feedback as usual. Any questions on importances at the moment? No? All right, thank you. All right, big one. So the redesign for bookmarks we talked about 2 months ago. You've seen the very first phase of it on Monday. And yes, I admit it's a bit of a shock when you first see it, but then the responsiveness of it is amazing. So different device sizes, different browser sizes has worked like a charm in most cases. So let me just talk a little about that. So we've completed that. The main purpose was to close those critical gaps for the WCAG 2.1. And then as we, over the coming weeks, as we figure out a new design that will take into consideration your 50 ideas of how to make bookmarks better, how to make sure we have a modern code that's easier and quicker, presumably, to maintain and improve. And also how we can do 2 things with the logic. How can we respond to your issues around link resolver and that type of thing? How can we put the defaults in your hands so that you can configure what you want your academics to pick? So that should allow different universities to make different selections based on how you're configured. And we're hoping to give that sort of variety and put those choices in your hands. So that will be the main functional piece of the redesign. And then with it, we're aware that WCAG 2.2 is now coming due in October. So this redesign is intended to meet those accessibility levels. There's approximately 9 new items of level A and level AA. And I don't see any major issues achieving that at the moment. And then the final thing we're looking at over the next month or 2 is the resource types. So what I thought I would do is first I'll talk about accessibility, and then I'll hand it over to Lisa to talk about the resource types. All right, so just a little more detail. It was important for us to get it to you before the start of term. And obviously, based on the discussions today, it might have been helpful to get it even earlier. We'll see what we can do, if there's anything we can do around the timing of the redesign. We'll talk about that and see how we can make that manageable for you. But this first phase was intended to be just a quick fix. We need to be more inclusive for more users. We needed to align the old bookmark screens with the rest of the product, as part of what Juan was saying about the bringing all the different sites together. This was a smaller piece of that as well. The new design, while more spread out, admittedly, is responsive and it solves some of those issues people were having, that you guys were having around either only being able to see a little tiny bit, excuse me, it's solved a number of those issues. You can see there's no more issue with the ISSNs having the hyphen, etc. And the most important thing was that it closes the gaps for 2.1, and then 2.2 will be our next focus. So with that, I'd like to hand it over to Lisa just to give us some insight around the resource types, and then I'll talk to you afterwards. Thanks.
Thanks, Kate.
Oops, sorry. Spoiler.
Wonderful. Thanks. Yeah, I'll just begin and say that we are looking into and planning on adding resource types to the bookmarking. And one part of that discovery and planning is that there are 2 surveys currently popping up in Aspire for users. They look like this, that you can see on the screen. For librarians, you can see it on the homepage when you come to Aspire, and for your tenancy. And for academics, it comes on the My Bookmarks page and also in the bookmarking screen. They are pretty much the same questions, but with some additional explanations to on the bookmarking screens. And some have already responded to these. That's super great, super helpful. And if you haven't, please do feel free to do so, and very welcome to do so. They are popping up, I think, a maximum of 3 times, so they will not be bothering you after you dismiss them too many times. And I'll give it over back to Kate.
Great, thank you very much. I'm just looking at all the comments around a previous topic, and I will take those back to the team, and we'll figure out what we could do. Thank you. All right, right now, I just want to talk for a minute or two about the British Library connections for those of you who use TAD-DC for your digitizations. As those of you involved would know, the British Library had a ransomware attack back in October, and we've been waiting patiently to find out what they were going to do. Meanwhile, everyone, is my understanding, has been using email and spreadsheets to kind of solve these problems. They've come back to us. We've had a conversation or two with them, and we understand that as they're starting from scratch in their infrastructure, we need to retain the email process for now, per their request, well, per their mandate. However, we're going to do what we can with TAD-DC to make that easier for you. Kind of enhance your email communications and help you track those statuses in the system. We'll look at helping you create the initial request that will, instead of using the British Library API, it will now send them the email, and you'll go back to normal email conversations, but you'll be able to link your orders in TAD-DC in our system, and either view or update what you need to do, and you can track any statuses there. Additionally, we're planning on building you some related EHS status filters so that you can find what you need when you're looking through TAD-DC. And I have a couple of concept designs. They're just kind of mock-ups. They're not finalized yet, but I'll just give you an eyeful. And if you want to take a screenshot or take a look and see if you have any feedback, that would be terrific. We have some input screen, and then the ability to link up with the different, depending on which service you used and what the prices were. And then the various statuses will set up the most important ones. Actually, if you have any comment about those statuses, I'd be interested in hearing that as well. Okay, maybe there's nothing major to say there other than we're going to try to make your lives easier. So thank you, Nikki, and all. With that, since George is not here today, I will hand it back to Scott.
Thanks, Kate. Next slide, please, Kate. So we're doing an integration with the Copyright Clearance Center in America. So this is similar to integration with a CLA. It's a rights checking. So what it does, it will allow you to send your items for rights checking to the Copyright Clearance Center, just like you do with a CLA. and it will give you the response back. So a couple of examples there on screen: digital sharing covered, for example, or it might be that digital sharing is not allowed. There's half a dozen different statuses that you might see. So it gives you the information that you need to make a choice over what you can do next. You do have to have an account with the CCC in America if you want to integrate with this. So if you do want to integrate and you have an account with the CCC, you just need to contact our operations team with your username, password, client ID, and client secret. If you want a demonstration of how this works, we can also organize that as well. It's pretty much ready to go in the next couple of days. So it really is just finishing off the work on it. So if you want to get on, use that, just let us know. We'll sort that out for you straight away. Next slide, please, Kate. Okay, let's have a look at some of the stuff that's coming in 2024. So the bookmark extension. You may have heard talking about this in the past if you've got a good memory. The bookmark extension is the bit we use to capture all the bibliographic details of items for inclusion and reading lists. It's on an old bit of code that Google have said, and it's the same for everyone who uses, all software uses bookmark extensions. You can't use that code anymore. It's something called manifest v2 if you want to know details. They're discontinuing that. So we've had to write it into a new version of code, completely works in a different way. That's ready. We've been doing UAT testing internally to make sure it works. So all the product team, operations team will be testing that, and it'll be ready in the Google store, the Chrome store, in the next couple of weeks, and then followed by all the others, you know, the Safari and Firefox and others shortly afterwards. There'll be that will then restore the link to YouTube. YouTube have changed the way their scraping works. The new method captures the information correctly. The old method, they changed something a couple of weeks ago and it stopped it all working. So a new extension will work with that. And I think someone asked earlier in the chat if the favicon for the bookmark extension is changing. It will do with the new extension. So as soon as that's ready, we'll let everyone know that that's available to download and use. The other thing, which I think we talked about earlier, is the branding colors. We did have some mixed feedback on the branding colors that we use in Digital Content Store initially, and we are looking to make that a little bit easier on the eye and changing the colors slightly. And our UX team are looking into alternatives now. Sarah's asked if the new extension will be updated. I'm not sure the exact way it has to work, but I'm pretty sure you'll need to install the new. I don't think it automatically updates, unfortunately. So I do think it will have to be a brand new extension installation. But as soon as we've got that into the Google shop, the Chrome shop, we're ready to let you know. The old extension will carry on working at the moment. We're not turning that off, but the new one, there will be a timetable when Google will probably stop that working. And at some point we'll want to stop supporting that, and the new one will definitely work better. So yes, we'll get that message out as soon as we know the exact details. Next slide, please, Kate. So the rest of 2024 is the bookmarking. So it's, as Kate said earlier, making it easier to use for everybody, better accessibility and more resource types. And we spoke a fair bit about that. The other big thing for 2024 is the Talis Reader. This will allow you to upload any variety of documents to Aspire. That includes Office, various image types, PDFs, and EPUBs. It will allow class commenting if you want to switch that on, so you can have whole class comments be switched on, and that will be coming towards the end of this year. The continuous improvement tickets we'll also be working on that are coming into Ideas Portal. We have still quite a few that we wanted to fit into 2024. Those are not ones that are going to change the interface, though. They might just add a few new features here and there. So we will release more information about those as we get closer to those being available. And in the next webinar, we intend to have a look at plans for 2025. I'm just going back to the questions. We will. There's a question. We really need to know when the old extension will stop working. yes, as soon as we know about the details of that, we will let you know. But Chrome is already, when they're updating Chrome, they're already stopping people using some of these search and functions. So part of that is controlled by Google and Chrome, but we will get some more information about that as soon as we can.
Scott, one for
Yep.
either Scott or Kay, we've got some questions around importances. So if there could be some clarification around how it will work, because there seems to be confusion around
Yep, I would be happy to.
mandatory. Yeah.
And if I could take Rebecca's first regarding the bookmarking layout. So we discussed a couple of quick fixes and decided that we needed to just get it out there. And we will look to make all those fixes, such as the one you're suggesting, Rebecca, about where the lookup is, things like that. We'll take into consideration and plan on including all those fixes with the redesign phases. Now,
there was a couple of questions about the importance to be mandatory.
Yeah, that's what I was just.
You're going to talk to that, Kate? Yeah.
Yeah. So, first of all, it's an option. No one has to use it. Second of all, to Andrew's point, where it could be 200 versus some may only have a handful, 5, 10 that aren't set. Where some of Andrew's academics may have hundreds, depending on their type of course and their type of reading lists. That's why we didn't want to force them to change every single one. So you have the option of going in and setting as many as you want to. And then also you can just go right to review. Maybe I need to hear some more detailed feedback around that. Maybe we could have a discussion about it. And there was another related question as well. Looking. Who did I miss? I see Emily's.
It was to do with the default important.
Oh, the default, right.
Yeah.
So the idea was to default to whatever the top one is, but there's no reason we couldn't do it default to whatever the bottom one is. And if that's your least intense one, if that makes it easier for you to know how many things to order or to not order too many, then obviously we can look at that. I think that would make it would make sense to have that be a feature configuration for you as well. But out of the gate, no default would be better. Well, having no default is what got us into the problem in the first place, because you didn't have to set anything, so people were not setting any. And we've been asked, some of you have asked, how can we get them to set them? So you can force them to set them, but if you wanted to use the feature, but you wanted to scam the system or get around the system, you could always add another importance. But I'm afraid that it might not help you get to the goal you're trying to get to. But we can talk about it. Maybe we could do some ideas or some voting or something like that.
Maybe it's just blank, Kate. I mean, what you could do is that they need to choose. If you're making it mandatory, it's not quite mandatory, but yes, they will still need to make a choice. But if it's a blank one and you have to choose from a drop-down list, maybe that's a better option.
So maybe just those people who are concerned about not setting one every time could introduce a blank or introduce your default. Force them to choose, right? So I think we're going to probably need to keep it the way it is. And if you don't want them to choose the essential or core type one as default, then you can add one in at the top that's something different. That's probably what I'd recommend.
We'll have a chat about it and probably speak to a few people here about their preferences before we make a final choice. But we do appreciate all your feedback on it.
Absolutely, that's terrific.
Hardest. And remember, it's optional. It's an optional feature, so you don't have to switch it on at all.
Yeah.
Was there any other questions for anyone? I do have some feedback when I just pinged our lead developer, architect, about the old extension, and he says it will stop working at the end of the year. So you do have a good period of time, and a new extension should be out very soon. So as soon as that's out, we will let everyone know through our various channels.
Thank you, Scott. And there's one more question from CJ.
And that would be on me. So the internal note field, we wanted to add it in a place where it's easy to find but doesn't add more buttons for list editors, so that we would still keep it quite slick. The reason why it's also in the create a new list screen is because we wanted it to be under the edit. So the edit list details box is the same in both, and that's why it's there. And yeah, that is the reason. And it's also for the aim with the note to list for a lot of our users when they've talked to us has been that they want to have a way for especially academics to be able to collaborate together on the list and share information that's needed within the list making, or to give information about the whole list to librarians. So we wanted it to be very easy to find for them from the very beginning. I hope that answers.
There was a question Pauline Wheeler asked, the Talis reader, we assume would be a big change. Will this be optional to switch on? And will it be available for testing first? It will be optional to switch on, yes. We'll, when we get closer to that being released, we'll have more information about it, but it won't be something that you have to have switched on. It'll certainly be optional. If there's no more questions, I thank you all for your time. It's been a bit of a longer one than normal today, but I hope you found it useful. And we do appreciate all your questions, and we'll take them on board when we're updating things, especially about the time for releases when we get round to that again.